Welcome to the Explainer. Now, I want you to imagine, just for a second, trying to build an entire universe out of absolutely nothing. Literally starting from absolute zero. Today, we're going to dive deep into the completely fascinating cosmic architecture of the ancient Egyptians, and we're stepping way back to a time before the beginning of time itself.
So, what actually existed before time? I want you to truly try and picture a universe with no sand, no sky, no stars, not a single human breath, and absolutely zero gods. There's no time as we even comprehend it. You see, the ancient Egyptians, they didn't start their story with a massive cosmic explosion or a blinding flash of light. No, they started with something much more eerie, cold, and entirely still. Just a limitless, lightless ocean. An endless expanse of pitch-black water that somehow contained everything and nothing all at once.
And this brings us to our first really crucial concept, none. Now, none wasn't just your ordinary water you could go take a swim in. It was an infinite, lightless ocean of absolute chaos. But more importantly than that, it was pure, unadulterated potential. It held the raw, swirling mixture of literally everything before it was ever separated out into earth or sky or life. And what's so fascinating here is how perfectly this abstract concept mirrors the everyday physical reality of living in ancient Egypt. Think about it. If you lived right by the Nile, you watch that massive river overflow its banks every single year, completely swallowing the land, only to slowly pull back and leave behind this fresh, dark, incredibly life-giving soil. In the Egyptian mind, the universe worked the exact same way. That dark flood of none was simply waiting to recede so creation could finally begin.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the first land, Benben, and Atum.
So how exactly do we get from a formless, endless ocean to the very first physical spark of creation? Well, you need a place to stand, right? Out of that perfectly still, terrifyingly dark surface of noon, a single, solitary piece of muddy land rises up. This is the primeval mound, which later became known in the city of Heliopolis as the Benben. You can think of this as the very first dry land, the exact dead center of a brand new universe, where chaotic water finally becomes stable earth. And the Egyptians actually symbolized this incredible singular moment in their real-world temples with the Benben stone. It was this small pyramidal or obelisk-like rock. They believed this specific, pointed shape perfectly represented the very first spot of land that caught the morning's first rays of light. In their minds, creation physically kicks off the exact second the sun's rays strike this sacred peak rising out of the deep water. And standing right there on that solitary, muddy peak is the universe's very first consciousness. Meet Atum. Atum is just absolutely fascinating because, well, he had no parents, no siblings, no family tree. He was the ultimate self-created god. He literally willed his own existence out of the pure, chaotic potential that was swirling around in noon. Standing all alone on the Benben, Atum held all the future gods, all of the earth and the sky, all future life and death, completely hidden inside his own being. He is, quite literally, the ultimate seed of the cosmos. Moving on to Section 2, Birth of the Elements. Because, let's be honest, a universe with exactly one god standing alone on a rock is still pretty empty, right? To change that, Atum has to begin the highly organic, very physical process of creation. From his own body, Atum brings forth a pair of twins. First up is Shu, the god of air. And then comes Tefnut, the goddess of moisture. And guys, the ancient texts describe this happening through extremely bodily acts. We're talking spitting or sneezing. This tells us something huge. To the ancient Egyptians, creation wasn't some abstract, polite, philosophical thought experiment. It was a living, messy, incredibly real physical event. By creating Shu and Tefnut, Atum gives the young universe its very first climate. We suddenly have the clear, dry air needed for breath and open space, mixed with the damp mist needed for things to actually grow. Now, as you can see, this illustrates a massive, necessary shift. Shu and Tefnut eventually give birth to Geb, the earth, and Nut, the sky. But at first, we have what is known as the suffocating embrace. Geb and Nut are locked so incredibly tight together that there is literally no room between them. Earth and sky are just pressed completely into one another. There's no space for light, absolutely no space for humans, no space for life at all. It's totally, unbearably claustrophobic. So to fix this disaster, Shu, remember he's the god of air, must physically intervene. This leads to the Great Separation. Shu forcefully steps right between his own children, pushing Nut the sky high upwards and pressing Geb the earth firmly downwards.
It is a painful, forceful separation for sure, but it's absolutely crucial. It's the true birth of structure. It finally carves out that physical middle world of air, light, and space where our actual human stories can unfold. All right, let's look at section 3, the finished structure. Let's see how all of this builds into the completed, really magnificent cosmic architecture that the ancient Egyptians imagined. Once Geb and Nut are finally separated and there's some breeding room, they are able to give birth to the final generation of this foundational group. That's Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Together, these 9 deities form what is famously known as the Ennead, the core 9 gods of Heliopolis. This is the complete, finished divine family tree. It stretches all the way from the very first moment of creation out of the dark waters, right on down through the generations to the specific gods who eventually govern human kingship and the realm of the dead. And with the divine family fully in place, the physical blueprint of the universe kind of settles into 3 distinct, highly organized realms. First, you have Tea, which is the flat earth disk where humanity, plants, and animals actually live in the Nile Valley. Arching way up high above that is Nut, the canopy of the sky where the sun, the moon, and the stars travel along her giant body. And sitting way down below the earth is the Duat, this hidden, deeply dangerous underworld filled with twisting caverns and guarded gates. But remember that dark, terrifying ocean from the very beginning? None? Yeah, it never went anywhere. These 3 realms exist all together, floating perfectly like a fragile, illuminated bubble of order, completely, utterly surrounded on all sides by the endless waters of chaos. Which brings us to section 4, the principle of Ma'at. So you might be wondering, what keeps this incredibly fragile bubble from simply popping, from dissolving right back into that dark, endless water? Well, that's where Ma'at comes in. Ma'at represents truth, balance, justice, and the exact correct structural arrangement of the entire universe. It acts as the ultimate cosmic glue. But here's the absolutely crucial point. Ma'at is not permanent. It is not something Atum just created once on the Benben stone and then walked away from. Oh no. It requires constant, exhausting, daily renewal. The sun's dangerous journey across the sky each day, and its fight through the dark Duat every single night, alongside the pharaoh's daily rituals back on Earth, these are active, ongoing, desperate battles to keep Ma'at alive. If they fail, the balance shatters and the forces of chaos will enthusiastically drag the entire ordered world right back into the dark waters of noon.
Let's quickly touch on section 5, other cosmic blueprints.
Before we wrap this up, it is absolutely worth acknowledging that ancient Egypt was a vast, incredibly diverse civilization, and different cities had their own brilliant thinkers tackling this exact same puzzle of turning chaos into order. We spent our time today really focusing on the Heliopolis tradition, Atum and his very bodily acts of creation emerging from that primeval mound. But if we were to look at a city like Memphis, they actually believed their patron god Ptah created everything purely through intellect. He conceived the universe in his heart and literally spoke it into existence with his tongue. No sneezing required. Meanwhile, over in Hermopolis, their focus was almost entirely on something called the Ogdoad. This was a group of 8 shadowy gods that actively personified the pre-creation state of water, infinity, and total darkness itself. They are all very distinct approaches, but notice how they are all at their core trying to map out the exact same structured cosmic architecture. Ultimately, all of these myths were attempting the exact same thing, turning formless chaos into a structured, balanced world where each god and realm has its place. And that right there perfectly sums up the profound, deeply human desire at the heart of the sources we explore today. The ancient Egyptians weren't just telling fairy tales around a campfire. They were mapping out the rules of their reality. They were desperately trying to establish a perfectly ordered, beautifully balanced system that could actually hold back the absolute dark. But I've got to leave you with one final provocative thought. Can this perfect, fragile cosmic architecture actually survive the jealousy of its own gods? Think about it. We have this delicate bubble of earth and sky floating out in the middle of chaos, held tightly together only by the constant maintenance of Ma'at. But within that divine family we just met, the Ennead, intense jealousy, cold-blooded murder, and massive power struggles are just about to erupt between Osiris and his brother Set. Will the architecture of order actually withstand the chaos brewing on the inside of the divine family itself? Well, you'll just have to join us for the next explainer to find out. Keep exploring, and thanks so much for learning with us today.